And I know they're going to revisit the Stranger Things universe, but leave those characters alone. So if you don't want to watch these other shows and you just want to treat Stranger Things as its own thing, let it be and let it be left alone. I think you'd have to wait and see how the kind of careers of all the actors turn out as to whether they decide or how much money Netflix can throw at people in 10 years' time if they decide to do another show, another movie. I have always been a fan of the fact that, you know, Friends never did come back. Obviously now it couldn't come back. They did like a reunion episode, but it wasn't a show. It was a, you know, a Q&A and things like that. I like the fact that they left it alone because often these things don't work and they do kind of, you know, the example I would give is Frasier. I was a massive fan of Frasier and it was one of the most highly awarded Emmy shows of all time. And then they brought it back and it just didn't feel right and it didn't work. And I'm just not a big fan. I'm not a fan of the kind of reboot.
There's only one, honestly, of all of the things that they've ever brought back, there's only one that I've ever thought masterpiece. And it was Star Trek Picard. So it was the cast. And now the first 2 seasons were just kind of Picard. And I know people didn't really like that. But the 3rd season, they brought back the original cast of Star Trek The Next Generation. And I got to say, I wasn't really that into Star Trek The Next Generation when it was on. I kind of knew of it. My mom, I think, watched it. So I knew sort of roughly the characters, but I wasn't so ingrained I could have told you all their names and stuff. But honestly, I watched that and it was so like, oh my God, as someone that doesn't even really remember that, like this is connects to that. And after I watched that, I actually went back and watched the whole Star Trek Next Generation from the beginning. And I was like, that was how you do it. Whereas everything else, Sex and the City's and just like that, people hated it. Charmed reboot, people hated it. And I think it's because people cater more for the audience now and the things that are going on now, where it's like really what you kind of what you want is the nostalgia. You want to basically, it's what you want, what you can't have. It's like, I just want to have those characters back again, maybe navigating the modern world, but they haven't changed. It's like, but it's 20 years later, they're going to have changed.
Yes.
It's a bit tricky, isn't it?
Take Friends, right? Like they're all going to be sat around that couch playing on their phones now. We're not sat around that couch talking to each other, right? So the dynamics of shows don't really work. And I think the problem is what you just said, which is they try and recapture the magic of the original show by almost trying to replicate the original show. You know, Picard wasn't, I've seen bits of Picard. I haven't watched the whole thing, but Picard wasn't him back on, you know, a Starship Enterprise as a captain, you know, doing the show. It was a very different, from my understanding, a very different dynamic. It was more about him, the man, and kind of his life at that time and things that were going on around him, you know. And so you see that with spin-offs, right? Frasier was actually a spin-off of Cheers. You know, they didn't follow Frasier to Seattle on Sunday. He's always in a pub every day like he was in Cheers. They changed the dynamic and they changed the kind of the course of the show. I think if you were going to revisit things, you either need a long passage of time between the originals so that people have kind of lost that emotional connection they had to it because it can never quite be the same, or you need a new dynamic to it. So that's what, you know, if theoretically what they do with Stranger Things is they make it about something else, but it's connected to the universe. So you can feel that kind of, you can tap into the fandom without having to kind of have Millie Bobby Brown on it again or Noah Schnapp or any of these actors in it. It can feel the same, but different. Then you can try and recapture it. But I think you need a different dynamic. I don't think you can ever recapture it. Will and Grace was the classic example. They tried to basically recreate the show. And I think it broke down because of personal relationships on the show, not the show itself. But it was never quite the same as it was growing up. And Will and Grace was like one of the biggest shows for me as a teen into my early 20s.
It's such a weird one. I also think that Hollywood is just out of ideas. And I think that they have a bit of a cookie cutter approach now. Like there are ideas that I have. I'm like, you know, right now, people are trying to get to Mars. Let's set a show on Mars of like, what would that be like? Like, let's do that. Let's have a show where an AI is the main character. You need to sort of play in people's real worlds. Like even I did this whole article and I did a panel recently on male role models. And I was like, you know what? There aren't that many male role models on TV. Actually, it'd be really interesting from my point of view to have a show where you've got like 4 or 5 main male role models, but they're all a different version of man. Like you've got one that's a gay guy, you've got one that's like a crypto bro, you've got one that just loves sleeping with women, you've got one that's like the sensible one and the dad, and like actually seeing all how, all of their different lives interact. I'm like, there's so many things that probably haven't been done. Why have you got to keep resurrecting things? Just to end this off, let me know what you think. Someone said this and I was like, I totally agree. It's like, the rule should be you can only remake or bring back movies and TV shows that were flops.
That's
because
a
if
great
you
way to look at it.
already had something that was successful, the only way to go is down. Bring back shows that just the world wasn't ready for and see if they work now.
Or shows, films where, technology has moved on to such a degree that you could do it so much better than the original, right? Like the classic example, to name something which, controversial, is Harry Potter, right? Where, less than 10 years maybe, they're bringing it back as a TV series. I personally won't be watching it because of J.K. Rowling and what she's become, but that's such a quick turnaround to bring something back. It's not like technology's moved on to such a degree that they can film it in such a better way that it will give you a better experience of that kind of magical universe. It's just coming back for the sake of bringing it back. So I agree with you. Either a massive flop and then you bring it back, or, technology has moved on to such a degree that you can bring it back, or take Star Wars. Like that was, another good example where they brought it back because they could do so much more. The lightsaber battles could be so much more than they were in the originals. So there was kind of a logic to bringing it back.